Chapter 12. The Sikaku. The watchman sitting at the diamond merchant. Both their faces were turning an angry crimson. "Mr. Tiffman, I don't know what kind of joke you're playing," the watchman said, "but I saw that messenger with my very own eyes." "I don't know, Mike. What kind of joke you're playing?" Tiffman roared back. "I tell you, no messenger came into my office. Can't help that. He came here and left." "I think you better call the police at once," Frank put in quietly. "Who are you?" Tiffman snapped. "We're sons of Fenton Hardy, the private investigator." Frank explained about the anonymous phone tip, and Tiffman's attitude prominently changed. The watchman called the police. A prowl car was in the building within moments, and Chief College arrived a few minutes later, accompanied by a plainclothes detective. "You boys watch the door," College told the prowl officers. "Rest of you go upstairs to Tiffman's office." The five crowded into the elevator and rode up. Tiffman's office door was flash panel with a panel in the one corner. It was marked 507 in motoristic metal numbers, and the name on the plate below said Paul Tiffman, Gemolales. After the Hardys had told Colleague about the anonymous tip-off, the two men had told their stories, and the police chief committed. "Sounds to me if the messenger pulled a fast one." "You mean he simply walked off without delivering the gems?" When Colleague nodded, Tiffin frowned and shook his head. "That doesn't make any sense. If he were planning to flee with the diamonds, why bother coming to Bayport at all?" "Is there any chance he could have been waylaid between the elevator and his office?" Joe put in. "If so, the thug may have dragged his body somewhere out of sight, and then gone down the elevator posing as the messenger." Colleague turned to Mike. "How about it? You're sure the man you took down was the same man you brought up here?" "Sure was," the watchman said tartly, "unless he was awful good at disguises. That messenger had red hair, freckles, and a wart on his cheek. So did the man who rode down." "Have you ever seen this messenger?" Colleague asked Tiffman. "Wouldn't know him from Adam." "Who sent him?" Tiffman named a firm of diamond importers in the New York City. "Ever had deliveries from there before?" Once again, Tiffman shook his head. "Normally, I've been buying trips to New York once a month and select my gems right there," he explained. "But it happens I was one to show a special selection into a wealthy merchant there, endorses Hells tomorrow. The New York firm was expecting a new shipment from South Africa, so they promised to make a parcel and wash it down here tonight." "How was the messenger traveling?" Colleague inquired. "By train. At least they told me he'd get into one at 8:15. Colleague picked up the phone and called New York City Police Headquarters and asked them to watch incoming trains. He also called Bayport Headquarters and told his desk sergeant to put out a station-wide alarm for the messenger. Finally, he tried to contact the diamond importers, but evidently their office was closed for the night. "Well, that's about all we can do now," Colleague said, hanging up. "But we'll have to check with that messenger here with the same answers tomorrow morning, or my name's not Clint Colleague." Frank and Joe hurried home, intending to radio their father immediately and report the mystery, but the mother, who returned with Aunt Gertrude, told them that he could not be reached. "Your father called, but your boys are gone," she explained. "He and Sam Radley had to rush down to Gary, Indiana to follow up some urgent clue, and they probably won't be back until Chicago before tomorrow afternoon." Next morning, the Hardys still had no further word from Jack Wayne, so they drove to the airport to make inquiries about him. At the office of the Ace Air Surface, they found a young freelance pilot named Tom Luster, who had often handled charter flying assignments for Jack. "Are you boys looking for Jack too?" "Yes." "We sure are," Joe replied. He told Tom about the puzzling interrupted radio message. Tom could offer no explanation. "It certainly sounds strange. What worries me is that Jack filed no flight plan. Ordinarily, under those circumstances, I would have expected him to be back by last night." "Do you think he may have crashed?" Frank inquired anxiously. "It's possible, especially if his radio conked out. That would explain why he hasn't called for help." Tom rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. I don't suppose you feel like telling me any more about this case you're working on? Knowing the young pilot could be trusted, the boys filled him on the mystery. Tom Lester's keen blue eyes showed interest at once. Well, sounds to me as Jack's on something big, Tom surmised. Maybe he even managed to worm himself into Harriff's confidence. If he met one of the gang, maybe he just hadn't had a chance to contact you again. Well, that makes sense, all right, Joe said. He didn't leave any message for you on his desk? Frank asked Lester. Pilot shook his head. I didn't notice anything. Let's take another look. Almost at once, Frank pounced on Jacqueline's phone pad. Look at this! The pad bore a scribbled notation on Jack's handwriting. Amethyst calling Seacat. Tom read the message with a frown. That word amethyst ties in with the radio call. Do you know this guy Al Harriff? Frank asked. I know of him, and I've seen him, Lester replied, but I've never met him. Well, let's look for him, Frank suggested. If we could work him into a casual conversation, we might fish out a clue. The private, rented hangar in which Al Harriff kept his plane was locked, and the boys and Tom wandered around the airport looking into other hangars and passenger terminal, but they could not find Harriff. When Frank and Joe finally left, Tom promised to keep his eyes open for the pilot. From the airport, the boys drove straight to Bayport Police Headquarters for news on the previous night's diamond mystery. On the way, they discussed a curious notation on Jack's phone pipe. That word Seacat sounds to me like a name of a boat, Joe speculated. Yeah. You know, Joe, it might be even the name of that mystery cabin cruiser. At headquarters, the desk surgeon told them to go into Chief Colleague's office. A red-haired man, freckled and with a wart on his cheek, was sitting in front of the chief's desk. Glad you're here, boys. This is Dan O'Bannon, the messenger. The parties listened to O'Bannon's story. Like I told Chief Colleague, the messenger said, I took the parcel of jobs straight to Tiffman's office. I delivered them to him and went right back to New York on the next train. Did you get a receipt? Frank asked. You bet I did. It's on the chief's desk. Colleague held up an opposite receipt form. It was signed Paul Tiffman. I've called Tiffman and asked him to come over here, Colleague added. When the diamond merchant arrived, O'Bannon looked astonished. Hey, this is the man I gave the gems to, he exclaimed. And I've never seen you before either, Tiffman said tartly. You certainly were in the office when I arrived, the messenger agreed. I was in my office every minute of the evening, and nobody could have taken my place. Tiffman added that the signature on the receipt form was not his, and proved by displaying his driver's license and other identification cards. O'Bannon shrugged and tight-lipped. Frank suggested they all go to the Haley building. If we reconstruct what happened last night, it may throw a new light on the mystery. Hey, good idea, Frank, Chief Colleague said. In 10 minutes, they were on their way to Tiffman's office. As they stepped off the elevator, the messenger's expression changed. What's the matter? Joe asked him. O'Bannon pointed to a large, unsightly crack in the wall plaster. I'm positive that crack wasn't there last night. Well, it's been up there for the past 2 weeks. Some careless workman banged into the wall when they were delivering more furniture. When they entered Tiffman's office, O'Bannon looked more bewildered. Hey, this wasn't the office I came to, he exclaimed. The furnishings were altogether different. Maybe you need glasses, his colleague snapped. Didn't you look at the sign on the door? I did look. The office number was 507. The sign said Paul Tiffman, gemologist. Chief Colleague took on a tinge of purple. I'm sending for the county polygraph expert, he roared, slapping his fist on the desk. You and Mr. Tiffman and the night watchman are all going on to get lie detector tests. That suits me fine, O'Bannon snapped. Frank and Joe were mystified as they drove away from the Haley building. Both boys would have to like to go out of the built to shift through this thoughts and the fresh salt air and sunshine. Since their sloop was not yet repaired, they settled for a drive in the harbor. The Napoli was moored at the deck. Tony was touching up on reward sports with varnish. Chet Morton lowered on the thwart, practicing knots. Frank and Joe strolled out to chat with them. "Anything new with the case?" Tony asked. "Plenty," Joe grumbled. "The problem is how to unravel it all." "Rats!" Chet muttered. "I just can't seem to tie a bowline on a bite." Suddenly Frank let out a gasp. "Maybe that's what Jack White's message meant." "What did Joe figure out?" "I guess you have to stay till chapter 13 to figure it out."